Today, I just want to jump into the content with you and talk to you about great leaders lead themselves. And so let's jump into it today, into the content about great leaders lead themselves first. And 6 self-leadership principles. Let's jump into it, dive into it. Number 1, you got to take control of your thoughts. I'm going to give you a Bible verse that applies to these things, but you got to take control of your thoughts. In Proverbs chapter 23, verse 7, it says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." The word heart there in the Hebrew comes from the mind, the will, the emotions, the way I think, my thought process. Every great leader knows that what you think about, you actually become. Most people don't even realize that, but it's the truth. What's going on in the inside of me, what I think about, what I'm dwelling on, I'm painting a picture in my own mind. I'm actually going to become that. You literally become that. If you think about being successful, you're going to become successful. As a man thinks, so is he. And so when you see yourself successful, prosperous, applying these things, when you see, if you're a pastor of a church, you've got to see yourself not as a pastor, that's just a title, but you are a leader. If you're an apostle, if you're an evangelist, if you're a teacher, if you're a prophet, whatever that fivefold ministry is, if you're a leader in the church, you got to see yourself and start thinking of yourself higher than you think today, because as you think, so are you. We're not boasting about us. We're talking about what God has called us to do, and we're going to think in this way to become that leader. We've got to realize that what's in our thought process is actually going to be what we become. Many leaders will beat themselves up because of failure. Many leaders will beat themselves up because things didn't work properly, because they missed the mark, they didn't do everything right. And okay, that's fine, but you can't think on that thing. You can't dwell on that thing. You got to take control of your thoughts. You've got to get beyond really quick a mistake. You got to get beyond really quick something that has failed. You can't dwell there, because if you're dwelling on the mistake, if you're dwelling on the failed process, eventually you're going to become that failure. Why? Because as a man thinketh, so is he. So here's what I think about. I think on the things, and the scripture says, think on things that are above, things that are holy. I think on things that are not necessarily what's happening. I control my thought on that thing. I'm looking for success. I'm looking to be the greatest leader there is in the kingdom of God. I'm thinking about how many more people I can lead to Jesus, how many more people I can empower to pull the potential that is in them out of them so they can fulfill what God's called them to be. And here's the thing. For me, this is Terry Linscott. What I know my yes is not just a pastor of a church to feed the flock and build unity and equip saints. My number one yes in my life, I know, is empowering people to become who God's called them to be. It's to develop leaders. I know that. I know that it's to take people from where they are, put them in the place where they belong, to become who God's called them to be. It's greater than just preaching in a pulpit on Sunday. My yes is to move people on their journey in life for leadership, for ministry development. I get it. I know it. I feel it, and I sense it on the inside of me. So I have to think about these things. When I've missed it in the ministry, when I've missed it in leadership, I can't dwell on that, because I know what my ultimate goal is to lead other people. If somebody doesn't become who God's called them to be under my tutelage and underneath my leadership, I can't dwell on that. I have to dwell on what I know God has called me to do. You got to take control of your thoughts. It's the first thing that you do as leading yourself, is your thought process. How do you see yourself? When you look in the mirror, what do you see? What do you think about? When you lay down at night, what do you think about? When you wake up in the morning, what are you thinking about? Great leaders are more interested in leading themselves first before leading other people. You got to have your quiet time. You got to have your reflection time. You got to have your vision time. You got to have your communication time. You got to have your development time. You got to have your exercise. And this is all about you. And these are the things that make great leaders. So here's a principle. You've got to take control of your thoughts. Hey, we could teach one whole podcast on controlling our thoughts as leaders, but I don't have that time today. So let's jump to number 2. Take initiative in every situation. This to me is leading yourself. This is finding the confidence of knowing what God's called you to do and doing it, and not being afraid of it, no matter what the obstacle is. I said it in the very beginning that, to the true leader, an obstacle is only an exciting opportunity to find a new way forward. And you've got to take initiative in every situation. I'm reminded in the book of 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 20 through 32, this is where David is taking bread to his brothers by order of his father, Jesse, and he goes up and he hears that Goliath is mocking the people of God. And he leaves the food with the supply carrier there, and he goes up to the front lines and he says, "What's going on here? What are we dealing with? Why are we listening to this guy? Why are we not taking his head off?" You got to think about David. He's a teenager, but he's an amazing leader, anointed of God to do something. And David didn't sit around and duck behind the wall and knee knock and everything else. He just took initiative. As great leaders, you got to find the self-confidence and the courage. I'm reminded of what God told Joshua, be strong and courageous. You've got to find that level about yourself, and you've got to face your fear. You got to face confrontation. You can't be afraid of it. Remember, you can't change what one of the podcasts earlier was you can't change what you're unwilling to confront. See, that's part of this taking initiative in every situation. It doesn't matter if it's just good and bad. It doesn't matter if it's failed or it's successful. You got to take initiative. David took initiative and he walked up and says, "Hey, I'll kill this dude. This guy isn't big enough for my God. Do you not know who my God is?" It's taking initiative because you know who God's called you to be. You know what's on the inside of you. Most people, when you think about this, most people around you are not taking initiative. Most people can see a problem, but they won't fix a problem. Great leaders lead themselves by recognizing that their whole responsibility is to better everybody around them and better everything around them. And so we learn to take initiative. You've got to learn to take initiative in every situation. This is one of those things. It's just step up and be confident. Now, many people will say, "Well, I don't want to push my weight. I don't want to, be the one that gets all the credit and all that stuff." No. That's not what we're talking about. We're actually going to deal with that here in a few minutes. What we're talking about is leading yourself, is beating discouragement. It's beating fear. It's beating being afraid of what you see in front of you. Take initiative. You don't need to be motivated. You don't need external motivation to do what you know you're supposed to do. This is leading yourself. You've got to build the courage and the strength on the inside of you, like God told Joshua. And I'm thinking about David as a teenager. He took initiative when there was confrontation, when there was an opposition. And you got to take initiative. And that comes from inwardly. You got to think about that whole thought. I don't have time to preach it today, but the reality is you had soldiers that bowed behind walls, knee knocking, scared, but you had a teenager that had the anointing. Remember the Anointed Leadership Podcast, the anointing on his life to go and take initiative to kill Goliath. And that's what happened. And so he was a leader. And that's why thousands and thousands of people followed him. That's why people turned and shouted that, Saul kills thousands, but David tens of thousands. Why? Because he took initiative. You got to lead yourself. Soldiers and warriors wouldn't fight him, but David did. You got to learn to take initiative in every situation. Number 3, here's a key component is you got to prioritize great work. You got to prioritize what's important as leading yourself. You've got to live a life of prioritization. If not, you're going to be distracted with everything around you. And, in the Bible, Matthew chapter 5, verse 37 says, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no." We talked about the power of no in one of my previous podcasts. I would challenge you to go back and listen to it. But you've got to learn what your yes is and what your no is. I'm a firm believer in knowing what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. When you give effort to certain things and what you don't give effort to do. I'm going to give you an example. In my life and in our ministry, we are a mission-minded ministry. We do global missions, Central, South America, Puerto Rico, Mexico, and we're in Uganda as well. We send money, but we've also been to Uganda and have helped people there. And maybe you're there in Uganda. You're listening to this. We still love you and we're praying for you. But in this is let your yes be yes and your no be no. You got to prioritize what are your yeses and what are your nos. And for me, I'm the pastor of a church that has a global missions vision. We are mission minded. We do a lot of mission work. But you know what my yes is not the mission field. My yes is pastoring the church. My yes is developing leaders here. My yes is a podcast. My yes is training leaders and building them and getting them ready to send them out. But my job isn't to go there. I know that's not my yes. I know missions are not my yes. That doesn't mean I don't go. It just simply means that's not my emphasis and nor is it my focus. And so you've got to prioritize. So many people say, "Hey, how's it going?" And most people will answer you, "Busy, man. I'm so busy." Why? Why don't you just say, I'm doing well, things are good, everything's great? When you're so busy, to me, I've watched it in my own I'm just talking about from experience here. When you answer things like that, you have no idea what you're shooting at. You're just doing everything. Find your yes, prioritize it, and let it become great work. This is self-leadership. 6 self-leadership principles, and that's one of them. You got to prioritize what is great work. What are the things, what's your yes and what's your no, and learn to tell the things no that are no's in your life, and learn to pick up all of your yeses. Number 1, take control of your thoughts. Number 2, take initiative in every situation. Number 3, prioritize great work. You got to have a prioritization in your life. If you don't, you're going to be distracted by everything. One of my greatest things, I've done 2 things over the last year and a half that have actually been effective in my life, that's allowed me to become and develop even more so as a good leader, in my opinion, is one, I eliminated social media from my life. Now, we use it. We're actually on social media with some people who are watching this or listening to it through a social media site, and we're grateful for social media. But for me personally, it wasn't what I needed in my life, so I eliminated it. That's number 1. Number 2, here, listen to what I'm going to say I did. I eliminated my notification from my email on my cell phone. You know why? Because checking my email all the time was distracting me from other things that was important. Emails are not urgent. Emails are communication. The thing that's important and urgent is what I'm giving my attention to, but the minute a red number came on my phone or the ding came on my phone, I thought that I had to check it. It was distracting from priorities in my life. And so it has been so much more freeing for me that I have to intentionally open my phone to check my email. But if there's no number, then I don't even know I have an email, and I've trained myself to do that. You've got to prioritize what is great work and what you should be doing. Number 4, you got to let go of needing to get the credit. This is hard for leaders. This is hard for successful people. Is because we're very ego-driven, especially men. We're very egotistical. We're very this is what I've done. Look how great I am. Look at what all I've accomplished. Look how good I am. Look how many people like me better than they like so-and-so. This is a problem, in my opinion, in today's society with leaders, is that we need the credit. I'm reminded of Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18. It says, pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. And here we find is this ego trip that you got to promote yourself. It's all about you. No. Great leaders don't need the credit. Great leaders, we know what we can do. We know the influence and the impact that we have in people's lives. Great leaders don't care about who gets the credit. We just care about their success around the corner. We know that our duty is, we know what our yes is, we know what we're supposed to do. And listen, there's people that'll preach better than me. There's people that'll pastor better than me. There'll be people that in our ministry that will teach better than me. There'll be people that'll be better leaders than me. But I know my yes. I know what I'm supposed to do to be effective in their life, to influence and impact their personal life. That's all that matters to me, is that they actually do what God's called them to do, and they do it well. I'm not interested in getting promoted and my horn tooted, right? I'm not interested in getting the credit. Why? Because that's a destruction and a fall waiting to happen. And people will quit following me because they're not looking for prideful individuals. They're looking for people to strengthen them, to encourage them, to bring correction when needed, not people that it's all about them. That's the lordship and dictatorship. That's not leadership. And so I'm looking at that. I'm leading myself. How? I'm eliminating the need to be patted on the back. I'm eliminating that part of my life so that I can function and fulfill and focus on the priority, which is doing the duty that I'm supposed to do. Number 5, you got to keep your cup empty. This is I probably should drop this to the 6th one so I can spend just a few more minutes on it. But keep your cup empty. What do I mean? Proverbs 18 verse 2 says, fools, this is the Passion Translation with the New Living Translation kind of mirrored together or meshed together. It says, fools don't want wisdom. They only want to impress you with what they know. Keep your cup empty. What does that mean, Terry? Don't think you're the Mr. Know-it-all. There's somebody smarter than you in every room. Somebody that's done more, that knows more. There's people that I know that are in leadership that want to talk about how great they are and all that they've done, back that ego. But what they're doing is they don't want to listen to wisdom. They're not being teachable. They want to tell you everything that they do know. Do you know those one-upper guys? Yeah, if you're that one-upper, I'm going to tell you, you got to quit that. You got to empty your cup. It's not about what you know. It's not even about what you've done. It's not even about what success is in your life, you got to learn that you got to be teachable, and you've got to beat that horse, because we all have stories of success. We all have stories of what we've done and how we've done it very well, and the people's lives that we've changed and how great that we can be. One of the greatest things in my life is I want to be what we call the Timothy, which is very teachable, the Bible teaches us. I want to be teachable, so I want to learn from anybody, and it doesn't matter who they are. If they're a teenager, a young adult, or if they're elderly, I'm open ears. I've got an empty cup. I'm a sponge. I'm trying to absorb everything I can to be better, and that takes work, because I want to speak up. I want to give, my 2 cents into every conversation, but I've got to bite my tongue, almost like you're biting it off. Because why? You got to keep your cup empty. It isn't about what you know and how impressive you are. It's about getting wisdom, man. It's about extracting wisdom from every other person you can. Why? So you can become a better individual, a better leader, a better husband, a better boss, a better manager, a better department head, a better pastor. It's not about you. It's about learning wisdom from other people that are in the same boat and doing the same things as you guys. Listen, we don't always have the answers. We want to think we do, but we got to keep our cup empty. And number 6, the last one, you got to prioritize personal growth or personal health growth. And what does that mean? Philippians 2:12, work out your own salvation. You got to work on your own life. It's pretty simple. I'm going to end the 6th one with a really simple point. Is you got to prioritize you. The second greatest commandment the Bible teaches is love your neighbor as yourself. And here's the thing, if you don't love yourself, you can't love other people. You got to put emphasis and invest in you. I believe the CEO, I can't remember his name right now off the top of my head, but the CEO of the Visa said, if you're a great leader, you'll invest 40% of your time into your own self. That's a lot of time into you, and you got to be able to do that. You got to prioritize you. This is how you lead yourself. You got to put effort into you. What are you reading? What are you studying? What podcasts are you listening to? You're listening to this one, so you're investing into yourself. I listen to multiple podcasts. I read multiple books on a consistent basis. I watch a lot of leadership YouTube stuff. I listen to TED Talks. I'm always building and investing in myself. Why? Because we're constantly putting out and leading other people. I'm trying to figure out what can I learn from individuals that are finding success. What can I learn from other people that aren't successful? How can I apply those problems that they had, which created failure, into my life so I don't create the same type of failure? I'm investing in myself. You got to prioritize you. This is how you lead yourself. Put a priority on you. Your greatest asset isn't your money. Your greatest asset isn't your company. Your greatest asset isn't your church. It isn't the people, the coworkers, or the clients. Your greatest asset is you. If you're not working, if you're unhealthy, you're going to lose it. And we want to think everybody else is our asset. What we do is an asset. No, you are your greatest asset. You got to work on you. You got to be healthy. You got to have a sharp mind. You got to have a great spirit about you that is willing to confront with great courage and strength and not be afraid to move forward. You've got to prioritize you. Listen, 6 self-leadership principles that Terry Linscott lives by. Number 1, I take control of my thoughts. Number 2, I'm taking initiative in every situation. Number 3, I'm going to prioritize what is really good and great work and eliminate distractions. I'm going to let go of my ego. Number 5, I'm not going to know everything. I'm going to be an empty cup where I can be filled with great wisdom. I'm going to learn rather than impress. And I'm going to, number 6, I'm going to prioritize my own growth. I have to. I've got to invest in me. And so I want to challenge you with that today. Hey, I appreciate you taking a few moments. I hope this content has added value to your life and it stretches you and challenges you to lead yourself, to grow in your leadership. And as you do, may the anointing of God get on you and all over you so that you can do everything that He's called you to do.